Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here on the Parker Love Sports YouTube channel. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to spend them here with me. In today's video, we're going to go over my top 20 players in the 2024 NFL Draft class. Now, if you do disagree, just a reminder that this is my personal preference, and if you disagree, that's fine. I love having draft discourse, and I love watching a ton of draft content on my own, and not everyone's going to agree, of course. Everyone's going to have their own different opinions, and I like to discuss and give my perspectives on why I like certain players above other players, and, et cetera, et cetera. You guys do too. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to have a discourse. So, if you do disagree, make sure you do so respectfully in the comment section below. Now, in this video, I will not be going over, or I guess I won't be going in depth of who these players are. If you're curious on my thoughts and my analysis, I have released a video for the past few days because I'm doing daily uploads leading up to the draft of every single position group and what I think of every single player. So if you're interested in what I think of these players, that will be in that video. Now, before we get started, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as the support is greatly appreciated. I am trying to do this as a career one day, and so if you could help me by leaving a like and subscribing, that would mean the absolute world to me. I currently don't have a subscriber goal. Typically every year leading up to the draft, I have a goal that I want to reach by the time draft day gets here. I mean, we've passed a major milestone in 500 subscribers, so maybe 225, but it's not a huge deal. But before we do get started, I just want to remind you that Jesus is king, and I want to remind you that Jesus lived the perfect life. He sacrificed himself on the cross and rose from the dead 3 days later, defying death. And because of that sacrifice, that is why we get to go to heaven, because Jesus paid our punishment on the cross. It's not how many times we read the Bible, or how many times we go to church, or how many times we do these good works. It's solely through our faith in Jesus, and because of his sacrifice on the cross. That is what saves us. Now, a lot of people won't like that I'm sharing this message, but it's important to me to share the message of Jesus as a Christian. I feel it's important to share this on my platform. Even though it's a small platform, it's still an important message to me, and that's why I'm going to share it before and at the start of every single one of my videos. And now, with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump in to my top 20 players of the 2024 NFL Draft. So my number 20 player of the draft is Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. Now, once again, I just want to say that this is not based on, I'm not going in depth of who these players are. I have already done that in my separate videos leading up to this. So if you are curious, go to that. But I really like Adonai Mitchell. He's my number 5 receiver. So obviously there's going to be 5 receivers total on this list. And I personally, I'm going to not be super in depth here because I have a mock draft coming out tomorrow for the Broncos, because I am a Broncos fan. And there is a situation where the Broncos get Adonai Mitchell. And, he's one of my favorite prospects. If the Broncos were to trade down and go wide receiver, if the top 4 are gone in Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, and of course Brian Thomas, I would love for the Broncos to go Adonai Mitchell. I love the upside that he has. There's been a rumor recently that he's not coachable. I feel like sometimes GMs and executives might put out stuff to have a certain player fall. I really like Adonai Mitchell, and I think he will be a true number 1 receiver in this league. You can see his stats in college. He played at Georgia, and this past season he played at the University of Texas. 93 receptions, 1,405 yards, 15.1 average, 18 touchdowns. But yeah, Adonai Mitchell is my number 20 player in this year's draft class. My number 19 player is going to be Chop Robinson out of Penn State. I might be a little bit higher on Chop Robinson, but I like the upside that he brings as a potential number 1 edge rusher. I think he's a little bit more raw right now, so I don't know if he's going to have the greatest or biggest impact as a rookie. He certainly could, but I think that he has a lot of time to develop, and then he can eventually be that dominant number 1 edge rusher that we see. Love the upside of Chop Robinson. Once again, I do think I'm a little bit higher on him. But yeah, Chop Robinson out of Penn State is my number 19 player in this year's class. He played in 30 games with 43 solo tackles, 17 assists, 60 total tackles, 20 tackles for loss, and 11.5 sacks. My number 18 player is going to be Quinion Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. I personally am a little bit low. a little bit lower on Quinion Mitchell than I feel like a lot of people are. He's my cornerback number 2, but I see the upside. To me, it's tough ranking these corners who aren't in a Power 5 conference. A few years ago in the 2022 draft when it was Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner, I prefer Derek Stingley over Sauce Gardner coming out into that draft. And this year I do prefer Terrion Arnold over Quinion Mitchell. But I do see the upside, and I do see the tools and the traits and the athleticism mainly that a lot of people like in Quinion Mitchell. I definitely think he goes higher than the 18th pick. This is just my rankings of players. And so, yeah, Quinion Mitchell is an absolute beast, and he is one of the best players in this entire draft, but he is my number 18 player in my rankings. In 43 games with Toledo, he had 93 solo tackles, 30 assist tackles, 123 total tackles, 45 passes defended, and 6 interceptions in his college career. Moving on to my number 17 player, this is going to be Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. Yeah, he's 6'6", 324 pounds. He's 22 years old, and he is very, very athletic at the offensive tackle position. He's my number 3 offensive tackle, but I don't think he will be here at pick 17. Obviously, this isn't a mock draft, so I'm not saying, oh yeah, Talise Fuaga will be the number 17 pick in this year's draft. That's not what I'm saying, but I do think he is going to go fairly early in this draft to a team that needs a tackle because he can be that true number 1 left tackle. He will be that blindside tackle for a team, and I believe he's got the versatility to play left or right tackle. If a team that already has that blindside protector as that left tackle, I believe Fuaga could play right tackle as well and give a team a dynamic tackle duo at both ends. My number 16 player is going to be Byron Murphy II out of Texas. He's not only a great interior pass rusher, but the main thing that I like about Byron Murphy is his run-stopping ability to eat up blocks, to plug gaps, and to make an impact in the running game. That is where he thrives. The best defensive lineman in this class, in my opinion, Johnny Newton, just missed out on the top 20, but Byron Murphy makes it here. My only defensive lineman, like I said, in this top 20, but yeah, he is an absolute beast. I think he will be the number 1 defensive lineman off the board to a team that needs him. He's going to primarily stop the run and help you stop the run, but he will provide some interior pass rush to whatever team drafts him as well. He played in 34 games at the University of Texas, had 32 solo tackles, 38 assist tackles, 70 total tackles. He had 15 tackles for loss and 8 sacks. My number 15 player is going to be Jared Verse out of Florida State. Of course, we have 2 other guys above Jared Verse and Dallas Turner and Leautu Lautu. You'll have to see where they come in here in a second. But there are 3 dominant edge rushers in Dallas Turner, Leautu Lautu, and Jared Verse. Of course, I really like Chop Robinson, as I mentioned. But the 3 most dominant edge rushers are here. And in my opinion, I have Jared Verse as the 3rd best among the top 3, but he is still an absolute beast coming out of Florida State. Obviously, my number 15 player in this class. He is going to make an instant impact on that defensive line. So, to me, Jared Verse, my number 15 player in 24 games with Florida State. He had 45 solo tackles, 44 assist tackles, 89 total tackles, 29.5 tackles for loss, 18 sacks. Yeah, Jared Verse, my number 15 player in this year's class. My number 14 player is going to be Terrion Arnold, and Arnold is my top cornerback in this year's class. Like I mentioned, I like the competition of playing in a Power 5, and especially in the SEC. The SEC is just loaded with talent, obviously. Probably the best college football conference. Not probably, it is the best. I won't say that because there's a lot of talent everywhere, but a lot of people think that the SEC is the best conference. I'm just not going to make a statement like that because personally I don't want to get yelled at in the comments. But yeah, Terrion Arnold is an absolute stud at the cornerback position. He has the upside to be a true number 1 corner. And if he goes to a team that already has a number 1 cornerback established and in place, then I I really like what Terrion Arnold can bring. He could be he's a number one guy, could be a number two on a team, but that would be insane if having essentially two number one corners as your top two guys. That team would be so hard to throw to if Arnold lives up to the expectations. Yeah, I mean Terrion Arnold, I know he's been linked to the Broncos, and as a Broncos fan, I like Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold, geez, I really do. But we need a quarterback, and if we go any other position other than quarterback in the first, I will be severely disappointed and severely underwhelmed. For the most part, there are some exceptions to that, and I'll get into a mock draft a little bit later, or not a little bit later today, but tomorrow I'll be posting another Broncos mock draft. But yeah, Arnold, love the upside that he brings. The corner out of Alabama, played in 25 games with 74 solo tackles, 43 assist tackles, had 108 total tackles, 20 passes defended, and 6 interceptions at the University of Alabama. My number 13 player is going to be Laiatu edge out of UCLA. Has had a little bit of injury concerns when he was with the Washington Huskies, but he is a beast of an edge rusher, and he will be a dominant force. He'll be an instant impact player day one to whatever team drafts him. I have a gut feeling that if we don't trade up for one of the top guys in the most likely scenarios in a trade up would be J.J. McCarthy, who's my guy and who I personally want for the Broncos to draft. Drake May is kind of starting to sneak into that conversation with how he's starting to fall. Or if the Broncos don't take Bo Nix or then trade back and take Bo Nix, I have a feeling that Laiatu could definitely be the pick for the Broncos. But yeah, we'll have to see. He's a dominant edge rusher, obviously out of UCLA. Played in 33 games with the Bruins with 61 solo tackles, 39 assist tackles, 100 total tackles, had 35.5 tackles for loss, and 24 sacks in his college career. Now, at number 12, my number 12 player is Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. I might be a little bit higher on Brian Thomas, but I love the upside that he brings. I was kind of sleeping on him for a while, and then, I saw his performance at the Combine, looked more in depth into Brian Thomas, and I was really, really impressed by what he brings to the table. Has the upside to be a true number one receiver. At this point, I think that, yeah, he's got the upside to be a number one receiver, but if worse comes to worse this season, he will be a solid number two receiver to whatever team drafts him. But Brian Thomas Jr., don't get it twisted. He is an excellent talent at the wide receiver position. And whatever team drafts him is going to be happy to have him as a pass catcher for their quarterback. In 38 games with the LSU Tigers, had 127 receptions for 1,897 yards, averaged about 14.9 yards per reception, and scored 24 touchdowns in his career. My number 11 prospect is going to be Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama. Now, a lot of people have been comparing him, and it's not fair to compare him to this player. And really, you're not comparing him. I mean, you are, but you're mostly comparing the athletic traits and the tools that he brings to the table. A lot of people are comparing him to Von Miller. And that's crazy. I see it. Dallas Turner is an extremely athletic player. My number one edge rusher in the class. More of a finesse guy, a speed guy, rather than a bull and power rusher. But yeah, Dallas Turner is a force coming off the edge, and Dallas Turner Dallas Turner paired with Will Anderson a few seasons ago at Alabama. That was a nasty force coming off the edge. I still prefer Will Anderson. He was my best player in last year's draft, but Dallas Turner is a great player in his own right. In 38 games with the Alabama Crimson Tide, he had 58 solo tackles, 62 assist tackles, 120 total tackles. He had 32.5 tackles for loss and 22.5 sacks. Now, moving on to my number 10 player in this year's draft, it is going to be Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. He's 6'6", 317 pounds, and is 21 years old. Now, Fashanu could have declared for last year's draft as well, and he would have been the best tackle in last year's draft. In my opinion, he would have been taken above Paris Johnson Jr. Decides to go back for another year at Penn State, and he had a great year. Fantastic year. I do believe that Joe Wall is the better tackle prospect, but Fashanu is elite in his own right. I can't remember which one he excels better at. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and it's not coming to me. He's either better at pass blocking or run blocking. Obviously, I can't remember which one, though. I mean, he needs a little bit of work in the other one, but he is a tremendous, tremendous tackle talent. I still think he is a great, great player. Obviously, he's in my top 10 for players, and I think whichever team drafts him is going to get a surefire, essentially Pro Bowl offensive tackle, one of the best in the entire league. I believe in Olu Fashanu. I think he will be one of the best tackles in the next 3 to 5 years. You know, this could age poorly. It could age like fine wine. We'll have to see. But I really like Olu Fashanu in this year's draft. My number 9 player is going to be Jaden Daniels out of LSU. And, I think I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. And I do like Jaden Daniels. I think he's an excellent player with his escapability and, just being that essentially Robert Griffin type of quarterback, that scrambler who can also pass. He can air it out, great at throwing on the run, buying time, extending the play, running with the football, has a really good arm too, can throw it into windows, has a strong arm. He is a very talented quarterback, and obviously I'm not saying things very well in terms of who these players are because I don't have my notes pulled up of who these players are. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, which, it is what it is. But Jaden Daniels is a really, really good quarterback. And like I mentioned in my quarterback video, he did move down one spot. He's now instead of my number 3 quarterback, he's my number 4 quarterback. And I could get some flack, and I probably will. But Jaden Daniels is my number 9 player in this year's class. In 55 games, he has 953 completions on 1,438 attempts. He's thrown for 12,750 yards, 89 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, and he has a passer rating of 158.4. My number 8 player is J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan. I don't know why I said that weird. And if you guys have watched this channel for a while, you'll know that J.J. McCarthy is my guy. I'm going to defend it. I'm going to defend J.J. McCarthy. I love the upside that he brings to the NFL. Now, when you're drafting a quarterback, is production important? Yeah, absolutely it is. But also, you have to look at the traits that the quarterback brings to the table. And I love the traits that J.J. McCarthy brings to the table. You look at you look at what his teammates said about him and what his coach said about him, is that he's a tremendous leader, and he's also very, very tough. If you remember that one play against Alabama, it was the flea flicker. J.J. McCarthy had to catch this pass, backpedaling with one arm, caught it, made a throw, got it lit up in the Rose Bowl, but continued and played for the rest of the game. You look at these throws that he can make into the windows, into these very tight windows, that's going to be essentially a window in the NFL. You're not going to have a lot of opening to make a throw at the next level. J.J. McCarthy made those throws. He's got a strong arm. Very obviously, oh my goodness. He has got a strong arm, can throw it deep, and can throw it with a lot of velocity, essentially. That's the word. Can throw it with a lot of velocity. Now he does need to learn how to not just bullet throw every pass and kind of layer it. But I've seen a lot of people say that he was carried by his run game. And yeah, he had an excellent run game at the University of Michigan. But, Michael Penix, who a lot of people like, he had 3 great receivers who are all going to be drafted this year. Obviously, Blake Corum's going to be drafted. Roman Wilson's going to be drafted. But J.J. McCarthy, I love the upside. And I know I didn't do a great job of explaining why. But if you want to go into more depth, you can go check out my top 10 quarterbacks of this class. You can also go check out the video titled the quarterbacks I want the Broncos to draft. And those go into more explanations of why I want J.J. McCarthy. In 40 games with the Michigan Wolverines, he has 482 completions on 713 attempts. He's thrown for 6,226 yards, 49 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and he had a passer rating of 160.5. My number 7 prospect is Rome Odunze, and Odunze is one of those big three receivers who they're all going to go super, super high. Right now, if I had to guess, my guess would be Marvin Harrison either goes to the Cardinals if they stay put at 4, or the Chargers if the Cardinals trade out. Malik Neighbors either goes to, I'm saying he's going to the Giants at 6. And then Rome Odunze, I think, is going 9 to the Bears. That's my guess. Rome Odunze is a very talented receiver. He has a high work ethic. If you remember back to the Combine, he didn't get the time he wanted for the 3-cone drill, I believe it was. And he stayed afterward to continue working to get better at it. And, they're not going to improve his time because it was past the times that he could have gotten. But he stayed to work at it, to improve at his craft. And so his work ethic is extreme. He has one of the best work ethics in the class, and he is my number 7 player in this year's class. In 40 games with the Washington Huskies, he has 214 receptions on 3,272 yards. He's averaging about 15.3 yards per reception and 24 touchdowns. Next up, my number 6 player in this draft is Joe Alt. Joe Alt just missed out on being a top 5 prospect, and honestly, it's essentially like a top 6, I feel like. My top 5 plus Joe Alt. Joe Alt is going to be a bookend Pro Bowl All-Pro tackle for a majority of his career. That is his upside at 6'8", 322 pounds, just 21 years old. Excels at both run blocking and pass blocking. He's elite in both areas, the best in both areas. And Joe Alt is one of those generational type offensive tackle prospects. The last time we saw a prospect like this was back in 2021 with Penei Sewell, who went to the Lions. And it's kind of similar, funny enough, to the tight end position, who we'll talk about here in a little bit, with Brock Bowers this year and Kyle Pitts in 2021. But Joe Alt, man, is he a good offensive tackle prospect. And whatever team he goes to, he is going to be a quarterback protector. He is going to protect some team's franchise quarterback for the next decade and a half. Offensive tackles and offensive linemen, they sometimes play into their mid to late 30s. So they will play for a while. So when you pick Joe Alt, you are making an investment that your quarterback is going to be safe for the next decade and a half. He is an amazing, amazing talent, Alt is. My number 5 player is going to be Malik Neighbors. Now, a lot of people says there have been character concerns, but I kind of throw that back to what I said about Adonai Mitchell. There's executives and GMs or whatever throwing out things about a prospect they want to fall. Malik Neighbors, his talent is unreal. He is one of the best players in this class, and he is my number 5 receiver. I'm going to hurry this up. You guys know who these players are. Malik Neighbors is my number 5 prospect in this year's class. 38 games with LSU, had 189 receptions for 3,003 yards, averaged about 15.9 yards per reception, and scored 21 touchdowns in his career. My number 4 prospect is Drake May, and I cannot believe that people are so low on Drake May. He has some of the biggest upside in the class. A few months ago, back in January, I was saying this class has 2 generational players at quarterback in Caleb Williams and Drake May, and now it seems like a lot of people are lower on Drake May. I think that if Drake May was in next year's draft class, he would be the clear-cut number 1 corner, because I do not like the 2025 quarterback draft class at all. But, I can't believe how much lower people are on Drake May. Sure, is he going to be great right away? He could be, he could not be. But we've gotten spoiled with quarterbacks starting right away with Joe Burrow, with Justin Herbert. There's been so many guys who have just made an instant impact in the league. And to me, Drake May could very well be a day 1 starter, or he could sit and learn behind a veteran. But the upside and the potential that Drake May brings, I cannot believe people are lower on him. And if he falls in the draft, I would love for the Broncos to trade up and scoop him up. I doubt it happens, but that would be amazing if it does. In 30 games with the North Carolina Tar Heels, he had 618 completions on 952 attempts. He's thrown for 8,018 yards, 63 touchdowns to 16 interceptions, and he had a passer rating of 154.1. My number 3 prospect is going to be Brock Bowers, and he and Kyle Pitts are the best 2 prospects we've seen in a while at the tight end position. You could maybe throw TJ Hawkinson in there in 2019, but to me, it is between Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers, and I think Brock Bowers is the better prospect than Kyle Pitts, and that's crazy to say because Kyle Pitts was a great prospect, but Brock Bowers is a do-it-all guy, can line up at tight end, can line up in the slot. You can feed him jet sweeps. He is just a weapon on offense. You could almost just not give him a position. He can play almost every weapon on the offensive side of the football. Brock Bowers is an insane talent, and whoever gets him, they're adding a very nice complementary piece to an offense. As much as I would like for the Broncos to take Brock Bowers, A, I don't think he'll be there. I think he's most likely going to the Jets. But B, I don't think we have the luxury right now to take a tight end to be this weapon. Sure, he's going to be this great weapon, but we don't have the luxury to get this luxury pick because that's what Brock Bowers is. He's a luxury pick to improve a team, to take them from good to great or great to elite. But in this rebuilding state, I just don't think we can afford to take Brock Bowers right now. As fun as he would be to have on the squad, I just don't think that's going to happen because we need our quarterback of the future. And we need these building blocks. We got the O-line, but there's other building blocks that we need, mostly at quarterback. But Brock Bowers is an elite prospect. In 40 games, he had 175 receptions for 2,538 yards, averaged about 14.5 yards per reception, and scored 26 touchdowns in his career, and led the Georgia Bulldogs in receiving every single year he was in school there. My number 2 prospect is Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously son of legendary wide receiver Marvin Harrison. He is going to be a true number 1 receiver for whatever team gets him. He is going to be an elite weapon for whatever quarterback gets him. He is one of the better wide receiver prospects we have seen in some time. You throw it back to Jamar Chase back in 2021 because a lot of times wide receivers don't get taken in the top 5, and that's what happened with Jamar Chase going to the Bengals, and that's probably what's going to happen to Marvin Harrison going at like 4 or 5-ish range, probably number 4 or number 5, maybe falls to number 6, but I don't think he gets past 6. That is the latest he goes. He's an elite wide receiver prospect out of Ohio State. I don't need to explain who this is to you guys. You guys know if you're watching this video. 38 games played, 155 receptions, 2,613 yards, averaged about 16.9 yards per reception, and scored 31 touchdowns during his career with the Buckeyes. And once again, if you want to know more about these guys, I did a more in-depth video at some point. Just go look on my channel. It's very recent. And of course, my number 1 prospect is Caleb Williams, one of the best quarterback prospects we have seen in some time. The likes of Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck. He's one of those type of prospects, in my opinion. The skills on the field as a football player, Caleb Williams is a tremendous, tremendous football player. The main concerns come, character issues. That's what a lot of people have brought up, but I don't know him personally. I'm not going to bring up the character issues because if I don't know someone personally or I haven't sat in the interviews, I've obviously seen interviews that have been public, but I haven't sat in the private interviews and the private meetings like a lot of us have. So I'm not going to make a judge on his character at this point in time, but that is the main knock on him right now. In 37 games with both USC and Oklahoma, he had 735 completions on 1,099 attempts. He's thrown for 10,082 yards, 93 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, and he has a passer rating of 169.3. Yeah, these are my top 20 players in the 2024 NFL Draft Class. Let me know what you think and what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.